Thank you. So, welcome everyone to our lunchtime learning sessions. Over the next 3 months or so, we're looking at different topics and skills around adaptation. And today's topic is around sustainable transport. Today, we're hearing from two expert speakers sharing knowledge with us and giving that Forth Valley setting for some of the solutions that we're going to cover in the series overall. Please keep an eye on our Eventbrite page and for all of the others that are in the series. I think we've got most of them up for now, but it is something we're hoping to keep going over the next year. So please keep an eye out. And also just to signpost our free membership as well, which is up on our FEL Scotland website. That's another good way to keep informed with any events that are coming up and keep track of these in particular. So I am Steffi. I'm working with our Forth Valley Climate Action Hub team within FEL Scotland, a charity based in Forth Valley. So these lunchtime learning sessions feed into our larger piece of work, which is the Forth Valley Climate Action Hub, which hopefully some of you attending have awareness of. Again, our website is a good place to look for updates around work that the hub is doing and events and that kind of thing, and ways you can get involved with the Climate Action Hub as well. So today we're going to hear from my colleague Ryan Flaherty, who coordinates the Community Active Travel Programme and Bike Mechanics at FEL Scotland. Then we're also going to hear from Will Seaborne from Climate Forth and hear a bit about the Inner Forth Bike Bus Pilot. Once we've heard from both of the speakers, there'll be a bit of time for Q&As and discussions afterwards. And if you have something in your mind, again, just pop it in the chat and we'll get to it after both of our speakers have presented. So I think that moves us on to you first, Ryan, if you're feeling ready.
Thanks,
Please
Steffi.
go
Yep,
ahead.
ready as I'll ever be.
Well,
Let me.
thank you for contributing today.
That's all good. So good experience. Um, we go. Hope everyone can see that now.
Yeah, looking good.
Fab, fab. So today then I was going to give a little talk about e-bikes and where they can sort of play a role in Scotland's green future. So working towards Scotland's net zero target of 2045. Um, Starting off then, if we skip ahead. So Scotland's climate targets, I guess, just first to like framework it, like what are the targets that we're working towards? So the ultimate target is obviously net zero emissions by 2045. That's quite ambitious. It's 5 years ahead of UK government's targets of 2050. They're sort of targeting a mid-century net zero target. Um, with the focus on e-bikes, I'll kind of like rein it into how e-bikes and the net zero ones fit around the transport's contributions to net zero. So the sort of the wave marker, if you like, for it just now is this goal of seeing a 20% reduction in the distance travelled in miles or kilometres by cars from the baseline measured in 2019 up to 2030. So by 2030, we'd want to see 20% less miles rather than journeys, miles um, over what was being driven in 2019. The key challenges, however, to get into there, the transport infrastructure certainly just now is still very reliant on carbon fuel driven vehicles. So diesel, petrol cars are still the lion's share of how we get about in our daily commutes, getting to the shops, whatnot. So we need to somehow shift away from that to lower emission modes of transport, whether that's electric cars, electric bikes, even bicycles. Um, so there's definitely work to be done there, but there's record investments as well. So just now, I think the active travel budget this year was something like 190 million pounds. Not quite the 10% of the transport budget that they had promised earlier on, but still it's moving in the right direction. So these record levels of investment, 190 million pounds, opens up the doorways to funding initiatives like exploring e-bikes, enhancing the cycling infrastructure and whatnot. So it's definitely moving in the right direction. There's no doubt about that. I think so. Before we kind of delve into it too much, let's like just what do we mean when we say e-bike? Because I think there's a lot of, especially in the news, a lot of things between e-bikes and everything is just branded as an e-bike. For us and the e-bike library that we've got here at FEL, all of our e-bikes conform to that top definition there. So a bicycle which uses an integrated electric motor to amplify the rider's own input. So what that means basically is that the bike will amplify whatever energy you put into it. So you still need to do the work. The bike will just amplify that by a factor of like at most up to 4 times. Um, this is all set out in law as well, so you can't just like, bolt any motor onto your e-bike. For it to meet the government regulations on it, which is to be classed as a pedelec or an EAPC, which is an electrically assisted pedal cycle. It must meet kind of like three main criterias. So it must have pedals like a normal bike. The electric motor must not exceed a continuous output of 250 watts, and the electrical assistance from that motor must cut out when you hit 15.5 miles an hour. Um, if it doesn't meet any of those three, say the motor's like 1,000 watts, for example, or the speed limit cuts off at 30 mile an hour, it can't be classed as an EAPC. It can't have that stamp of approval on it, and it needs to be like type rated in as an electric moped or electric motorbike. And with that comes like the need for MOTs, insurance, road tax, and all the rest of it. So it's a different category altogether. Um, the benefits that e-bikes bring over like traditional analog bikes, if you like. What we have noticed running the library is that by adding a motor to what is essentially like the most efficient machine we've ever made, it opens it up to a massive audience. So you no longer need to be like Chris Froome and have all the energy in the world to, commute back and forward on your bike. You add a little motor onto it, it's nice and discreet. Suddenly it's opened up the age limit massively. It's no longer just like the realms of young people, if you like, to be riding back and forward to work on. It opens it up for everyone, and we really see that here with the e-bike library that we've got at FEL. Just when you look at the demographic of the users coming through the door, it is literally the full spectrum, which is just like great to see. Other benefits as well of the little motor. It's great for hilly terrain. So Scotland's not like, it's not Belgium, it's not the Netherlands, it's not pancake flat. There's hills everywhere you look. So just having that extra wee bit of push on the hills and into the wind, it's always going to be a welcome benefit. Focusing in on transport and the carbon emissions coming from transport. So at the last measurement, almost 26% of all of Scotland's greenhouse gas emissions came from transport. So that's things like, lorries, trucks, cars, vans, aircrafts, shipping and stuff. So it's the full spectrum of transport there. 26% of all greenhouse gas emissions. Of that 26%, roughly 37% comes just from personal car journeys. So as a percentage of like the total greenhouse gas emissions, that's like 10%. So it's the biggest emitter basically is our personal car usage. Transport Scotland found that in 2022, the median car journey was under 5 miles, which is like not very far. There was a similar study in China a couple of years ago where they looked at two different groups. So Group A were households which their primary modes of transport were walking or driving. In Group B, they had walking, driving, but they also had e-bikes thrown in. And the study found that the threshold at which people in Group A decided to take the car was a mile for the journey. So if the journey was like 1.1 miles, I think was the average, the participants would opt for the car. So they wouldn't walk that mile, they'd just choose to drive it. With the introduction of the e-bike into the second group, that jumped up to just over 5. It was like 5.2 miles was the average distance that they decided to cycle. And then beyond that, they would get the car. So the introduction of e-bikes and that setting massively cut out car usage because the majority of trips in Scotland as well as worldwide are these like really, really short journeys, like popping down to the shops, maybe even like commute to work if you work fairly local. It's these really, really short journeys which an e-bike would be, a perfect substitution for. In Scotland, just kind of bringing it back home a little bit, there's this massive reliance still on fossil fuel powered vehicles. So from the motoring industry stats, 77% of the almost 180,000 new cars, I think, in 2021 were either petrol or diesel. That remaining 23% was your sort of EV and mixed fuel ones. So we're still just going out basically and buying petrol powered cars that are contributing to all these greenhouse gas emissions in the tens of thousands. So we really need to kind of shift away from that. And as well, over the past sort of like the 10-year span between 2011 and 2012, there's just more cars on the road. Like 2011, we had 2.7 million vehicles. It's now over 3 million vehicles registered in Scotland has been on the roads every year. So the road network's not really growing, but we're just piling more and more cars into it, and just expecting there to be some change. So we need to address this. Um, so we need to, like I said, there's a major shift in how we move people and goods about, really focusing on these like really small journeys because that's the ones where we can have the most impact, and it's one of the impacts, one of the journey types where e-bikes can really have that quite profound impact on it. So teasing ourselves off of car usage, e-bikes, if we're looking to kind of eliminate like the CO2 in our emissions, e-bikes are virtually emission free in usage. They run off electricity. There's no tailpipe emissions. There's none of the other harmful nitrous oxide emissions or anything like that you get with cars as well. Even compared to electric cars, the other emissions associated with them, like like rubber and stuff off the tires of EVs, is almost negligible on an e-bike because the tires are so small in comparison. Um, and when you look at the broader energy network, as we decarbonize our energy generation. So we're starting to move towards less fossil-based fuels for energy power generation. That's like green energy basically that we are now filling our green vehicle with, if you want to call it that. So it's definitely everything sort of moving in the right direction there for e-bikes. Versus EV cars as well. An e-bike for the same energy input will go further. So if you put like 500 watt hours of power into a car, 500 watt hours into an e-bike, you'll get about 60 miles from the bike, but you'll get far less from that in the car. And the cost to run them as well is like literally pennies. The last one I did before coming on here, to charge a 500 watt hour e-bike battery, which is a pretty standard size in a e-bike these days, which you would get around 50 miles for, would cost about 9p if you're on like a kind of standard energy network. So yeah, super cheap, efficient way to run about the country on. Um, Aside from the environmental benefits of it, e-bikes obviously take up a hell of a lot less space on our more congested roads. So I found this little thing quite interesting. This was a little snap from Bob in Accounts. He's an Instagram page that I follow. It's quite interesting. He's on Instagram, Twitter. This was in Cambridge, I think it was. He was in when he took this little snapshot. So it started up like quite a lot of discussion in the chats on it, which was quite interesting to see. Basically, he's pointing out that there's 8 cyclists there in the space of one car. So if we can get people out of the cars, it massively cuts down on congestion in city centres as well. The roads aren't going to get any bigger. A lot of our city centres are quite historic. There's just not the space to keep building more and more roads. So we just need to use the roads that we have more efficiently if we're going to have more people on them. Like I've already said, there's no tailpipe emissions from them, so city centre air quality can only be better with an e-bike. If there's no basically burning of fossil fuels and stuff in city centres, and it's more affordable. E-bikes are obviously more expensive than a regular bike, but the RAC Foundation's estimated that in the past 10 years, so past decade or whatnot, the cost of like ownership of a car and maintaining it and running it and fueling it has increased by over 50%. So what 10 years ago might have cost like 10 grand for a Ford Focus is now well above £20,000. So the cost to entry of being a motorist now is incredibly high. With the cost of living, e-bikes could be a more affordable, more accessible solution, that people still have their transport independency instead of either just simply not going or having to rely on public transport. And it's healthier. It's there's no denying that you're out cycling about, you feel better in yourself. If everyone's healthier, reduces the cost on the NHS, which again can only benefit society in a wider context. I've pulled together these little case studies as well, which just kind of highlight it. I won't run through them all because the outputs are more or less the same although the inputs are slightly different. But in each of these cities, we've got Amsterdam, Copenhagen, Paris, Portland in America, and Beijing in China. The governments and local authorities in each of these areas looked at ways to introduce e-bikes into their transport framework. So whether that was prioritising cycle lanes, setting particularly in Beijing, they ruled certain districts of the city that were like off limits to cars between certain hours. So you could only access those areas if you were on an e-bike. The results have been basically what we need to see here in Scotland. So there's already like evidence there that if we follow in the footsteps of these other European nations and America and China, that we could see similar results back here back here at home, in terms of, greater uptake of e-bikes, reduced congestion, better air quality, and just everyone being able to get about our towns and cities more efficiently and quicker. In Scotland, so just now, because we're getting all this like massive influx of funding from Scottish Government and so on, there's been a massive increase in the cycle lanes and integrating the cycling infrastructure with the road network. That's especially true since COVID, and certainly here in Stirling where we are, there's been huge investment in the walk, cycle, live infrastructure, which links like Stirling Town Centre, the bus station, the train station, and the kind of destination generators like the university and the colleges. Um, but as we've already seen, there's more and more cars competing for this limited space on our roads. So if we're serious about like this modal shift, then I think we need to rethink how the road's current like planning strategies are aligned with moving people out of cars and maybe take a little step back and not prioritize the cars on as many of the road junctions and stuff to just make it more accessible, safer, and easier to get about by e-bike. Uh, Ways that we can do this. So the policy from Scottish Government and UK Government can incentivise moves in transport. We've done it already when, I remember being incentivised to go out and buy a diesel car. So it was financially beneficial to me to run up to Arnold Clark and buy a diesel car because it was, the government was funding it. We then moved away from that. We were told to scrap diesel car cars and move on to petrol. So there's legacy there that the government, if they want to, they can, by making it financially advantageous to people to go out and invest in different modes of transport. Um, it's this kind of like once we've got the government behind it, we could then hopefully see the increased adoption of e-bikes as a mainstream mode of transport for these like short and medium distance journeys that we want to see. And I've mentioned there the network effect, which is it basically means like the more something's used, the more valuable it becomes. So the more people who drive, the more worthwhile it is to build more roads. The more people who cycle, the more valuable it is to society to build more cycle paths and join up the cycle infrastructure that we've already got. And just that hopefully will then lead to reducing daily commuting patterns by driving and see that kind of shift towards e-bikes. One thing that we're kind of hoping to work on here in Stirling by having our hub at the train station is this idea of like collaboration with public transport and creating a more of a seamless multimodal transport solution. So instead of you having like your bus pass and then your rail card and then like something else for the public bike share scheme, is that you just have this like one like card almost that you can access a bit like the Oyster cards in London if you still have them, where it works across all the different types of transport. So it's just again cutting down all these different barriers to people. They just have like one card that gets them access to everything, and hopefully just again removing these barriers to make it more easily accessible. And those barriers, the big ones we've found, especially when people come in and hire bikes off the library, and they look at maybe buying one themselves, is the initial upfront cost. Like there's no getting away from it. An e-bike, spec on spec, an e-bike versus an analog bike's about 2.5 times more. So if you're going to a bike shop and buying £1,000 bike on your cycle to work scheme, to get that same bike with a motor on it is probably going to cost you about £2,500 or so. So it is a massive investment on it. Hopefully, if governments can incentivize these things, the price will fall, and just as the technology advances, it'll always fall as well. Boosting into infrastructure, more charging stations, like I guess like EVs for a wider adoption, we need to see a growth in the charging network. However, e-bikes have got the benefit that you can take the battery off, so you don't need a physical charging network like out in the street. You could take the battery off, take it to your office, and charge it in there. So seeing more support as well from employers would make this more feasible if they offer those kind of facilities at the end of the destination. And then change of public perception. We get a lot of concern around like the fear of these things just bursting into flames, which is hard to overcome, especially when it's like kind of portrayed so often in the media that e-bikes will just like spontaneously catch fire. You could have it just sitting charging in your house and without anyone and it'll just catch fire. That's really not the case with quality bikes that you can buy in bike shops these days. There's systems in place on the battery, on the charger, on the bike itself that prevent the thing just bursting into flames. I think there's a lot of like scaremongering perhaps in the media around these. So it's just like having awareness really of what's out there, buying from reputable shops, buying from reputable brands that will avoid these scenarios from happening. And then perhaps the biggest barrier challenge to adopting it in Scotland is the weather, which we just can't do anything about. It's just one of those things. Yeah. So yeah, just kind of to summarize that then, e-bikes they definitely I think have a place in achieving our net zero targets by 2045 and helping to reduce emissions. Just really by targeting those really small everyday journeys that we make, which are the ones that emit the most CO2. Uh, Moving towards that, just encouraging further investment from public sector, from councils, local authorities, and private sectors like employers and transport organisers to just put in the facilities that we need. Um, if we can get the modal shift towards it, then you know there'll be a response from councils and stuff to build the infrastructure to support it. Um, and yeah, looking ahead, it's e-bikes aren't going to do all this on their own. They're just a small part in it, but they can definitely fit into the kind of the wider matrix of our transport, um, and hopefully, yeah, play their little part. Cool. That's it. Thanks, guys.
Thanks, Ryan. I've popped a link as well to the bike library, FEL's bike library in the chat. And I don't know if it's worth mentioning as well, just that the system that you use to sort of manage that booking and catalogue of those e-bikes is Hub Tiger. Just mentioning it in case anyone on the call is looking into that. Just I know it freed up a lot of our team's capacities and things, but we are quite a large bike library, so equally, if you're on a volunteer system, it might not suit. Not sure what you think, what you would recommend, Ryan, but
Yeah, it's definitely scalable. We started off like quite small with the bike library, and Hub Tiger, it's like a paid for system, like we have to pay for it, but they have like tiered pricing. So the fewer bikes you have in your library or in your fleet, the cheaper it is to subscribe to it. The prices go up the more bikes you add to it. Um,
okay.
but yeah, for us, it's been like game changing. We used to get maybe like 10 e-bike rentals a month before moving on to Hub Tiger. Now we're kind of doing like 10 a week, like consistently just throughout the year. There's not really been like a dip off through like November, December, January, which we thought we might see. Um, it's just been like steady a month, which has been great to see.
Yeah, it's really good. Great. Well, thank you so much. If you have any questions and things right now, feel free to pop them in the chat and we'll read them out at the end. We're just going to hear from Will Seaborne next, from Climate Forth. Welcome, Will.
Hi everyone, thanks for having me. Let me just get my PowerPoint set up.
That's looking good for me.
Okie doke. I'll just get started then. So hi everyone, my name's Will and I'm the Visitor and Business Engagement Officer for Climate Forth. And I've been asked to come along today just to talk about some of our sustainable travel and transport initiatives that we're doing in the project. So first, just a quick introduction of the project for those who aren't familiar. We're Climate Forth, which is an acronym for furthering our resilience through heritage. It's the latest project from the Inner Forth Futures Partnership, and the partnership is made up of the nine organisations that you see here. So it's Fife Council, Clackmannanshire Council, Stirling Council, and Falkirk Council, as well as Green Action Trust, Nature Scot, RSPB, Sustrans, and Historic Environment Scotland as an advisory member. It's a national lottery funded project focused on the Inner Forth region, and you can see our project map here on the slide. So the red line is our core area, and the blue dotted line is the our wider engagement area, and it roughly stretches from the three bridges through to Stirling. So it's quite a big project, quite a multifaceted project, and it's split into three objectives. So I'm just going to very quickly introduce objectives one and two. So objective one includes community and young people training, family outreach, and the creation of local community resilience plans designed to increase climate resilience moving forward. And objective two is capital works, again to increase natural and built heritage, climate resilience, as well as a VR outreach aspect as well. Objective three is what I'm in charge of and focuses on tourism and business engagement. Um, this includes encouraging sustainable travel, particularly cycling, in the Forth region for both tourists and locals as well. Much of what we're trying to achieve ties into current tourism trends, where there's a desire for slow and experiential tourism, as well as a desire to travel more sustainably. Um, we also aim to direct footfall to lesser known heritage sites or lesser known attractions in order to spread the concentration of visitors and ease over tourism as well. Um, so a big initiative that we started at the start of the project was rebranding part of the National Cycle Route 76 as the Round the Inner Forth Cycle Route. Um, it stretches from Inverkeithing to Stirling and then back round to South Queensferry. Um, and we had a logo made up here. You can see on the signposts. So these are now up all around the area. We have the route listed on Sustrans website and Visit Scotland's website as well. And it's had thousands of views since its launch. Has been really popular, which is great. We contracted out professional photographers and to promote the route. And I have one of the promotional videos here that I was just going to show quickly. It's only a couple of minutes. There's no sound in the video; it's just music. So I thought it'd be easier just to mute it. But I'll let this play just now. So a lot of the sites featured in this video are some of these lesser known heritage sites that we're trying to encourage people to visit, rather than the sort of big honeypot sites as they're known. Apart from the Wallace Monument, obviously, and Stirling Castle, that's pretty well known already. So the video is just to sort of showcase some of the amazing attractions we have in the area. And then to join on to this, we've also created these day trip route cards. I've got an example on the slide here. These have the aim of giving people options to do achievable short day trips for a variety of different skill levels. We tried to keep them as we tried to keep them as road free as possible. We also include businesses along the way. So you can see in the picture in the bottom right, we've got cafes, bike shops, and we also include some of the attractions you might like to see like heritage sites and attractions, as you can see in the top image. Um, these are all free to download off our website, as well as the Visit Scotland and Sustrans websites. And there's also physical versions available, which we've been distributing to businesses and have proved very popular. We've actually already smashed our targets for getting the downloads of these, which is great. Um, and we've had lots of businesses asking for more of the physical versions to distribute as well. Um, so looking forward for the Round the Inner Forth route, we're going to be installing new bike parking and maintenance stations around the route. These locations will include the lesser known heritage sites that we're trying to focus on, such as the pineapple pictured here. We also have two more day trip route cards in productions. We're planning more LED cycles and events, and we're hoping to collaborate with other businesses and organizations to promote local heritage sites, attractions, and businesses. Um, the next thing I want to talk about is our Inner Forth bike bus, which is a pilot service designed to encourage cyclists and walkers to travel to new areas, maybe areas that they might have been out of their reach without a car. So the service runs on Sundays. The service this year will be starting on the 20th of April and it'll run through to October. Um, we've focused on areas that have poor public transport links, and particularly north of the Forth, there's no train line linking Stirling with the East Coast. So the bus aims to sort of plug that gap a little bit. Obviously, normal buses don't allow for bike transportation. So yeah, they're not really an option if you're wanting to try and get a bit further out with a bike. The service is completely free, and it's just simply a minibus with a trailer on the back, as you can see on the poster here. Um, as I said, walkers are also encouraged, and you can get e-bikes on the trailer and any other kind of like trikes and stuff that you might have. Um, so the route that the bus took in the 2024 season, you can see here with the orange dots around the map. So it stopped in Alloa, near the Kincardine Bridge, the Kelpies, Grangemouth, Bowness, Linlithgow, South Queensferry, North Queensferry, Dunfermline, Charleston, and Valleyfield. We have two buses that run at the same time. One completes the circuit clockwise and the other runs anti-clockwise. And each bus completes two full circuits a day. The buses also stop for 10 minutes at each stop just to build in some time for loading and unloading bikes. And the service has been promoted in lots of different ways, including leaflets, posters, social media, radio ads, and promotion across our partners' websites. Um, the I'll talk a little bit about this later, but we did struggle a bit with the promotion as we're just a small team, and the outreach is quite a difficult aspect of it. So some of the stats, the aim was to have the bus operating an average of one third capacity, which would be 330 passengers over the two seasons. The first season we had 125 passengers, with an average of just under five a week. Um, the numbers started off very low, and picked up towards the end of the season. So actually, we were pretty pleased with 125, compared to how it was looking at the start of the season. We also had to contend with quite a grim summer, and we had a couple of days where there were no passengers at all due to bad weather and even weather warnings. So again, this Scottish weather that Ryan was talking about discouraging people from getting out on their bikes. Um, we did have a good variety of people using the service. So we had a few returning users who were on the service most weeks. There was one guy I spoke to who would take the bus to Charleston from Alloa and race himself home every week. Another woman used the service to build up her strength following a back injury, and found that knowing she had a way home on the bus helped motivate her to go further. Um, some people did use the service more or less as public transport as well. We had an older couple who used it to visit the Kelpies because they'd never been before. We also had, I spoke to two older ladies who were using the service essentially as a taxi to try out boozy brunch spots in the area, which wasn't necessarily what we had in mind for the service, but I'm glad they could make use of it. One group we didn't really manage to engage with were families, which is a bit of a shame. We thought maybe in the holidays we would see some families using the service, but unfortunately not. So that's an area we're hoping to change for the coming season. Um, we did have quite a few issues with the service. Some of these relate to the fact that there was a change of staff, and my predecessor, who was involved in the development phase, left, and then I joined 2 months into the season. So there wasn't as much opportunity for promotion as we would have liked. And for a good couple of months, there was no one who was sort of solely in charge of the service. So that was a bit of a difficult situation that we had to navigate. A key issue that I mentioned earlier was lack of promotion. It was just very difficult for a small team to achieve the level of promotion that we would have liked and maybe needed. So, particularly relating to the physical promotion, like posters and leaflets. And this was an issue that we saw in passenger feedback as well. We did promote it heavily on social media and we had high levels of engagement on those posts, but this didn't necessarily translate into people actually using the service. Another piece of feedback that we had from passengers and the drivers was that the route just took too long to complete. So the number of stops, as well as the 10 minutes built into each stop, were the main issues here, I think. Passengers found it particularly frustrating when sat at a lesser used stop for 10 minutes, not really doing anything because they had to stick to the timetable. So I totally agree with this criticism. And with the 2024 route, it would take around 2 hours to complete half the circuit. So from South Queensferry to Alloa, which is too long, and discourages people from traveling very far on the bus, which kind of defeats the purpose of the service. So yeah, as I mentioned, I wasn't in post during the development phase. However, from what I hear, it was a bit of a scramble to get the stops confirmed, and we got permission sort of right at the last minute, which I think probably contributed to some of these issues. Um, we also had some issues with our provider, so I won't go into too much details about this, but we did have a few problems. For example, we asked if the drivers could direct passengers to fill out feedback forms for us, as well as other Climate Forth content. And it varied a lot as to whether this was actually done. It wasn't always the same drivers doing the service, and if a driver was called up on short notice, they weren't as clued up on the processes as we'd have liked. And from our own experience riding the bus, there were some drivers who were very passionate about the service and what it was trying to achieve, and ensured that everything was done and completed by the end of their shift. Others were less enthusiastic and didn't really engage with the passengers. They also didn't always adhere to some of our sustainability policies that we had in place. So they used like plastic cable ties to secure the bikes to the trailers. And yeah, there were some other issues with timings and the timetable that I won't go into right now. So for this year, the 2025 season, we're making a few changes. So the biggest change is that we're dropping a few of the stops and also moving some around to reduce the time that it would take to go around. So you can see on the map here, the blue points are now where the bus is going to stop. So we have dropped 3 stops from the service. The original plan was to drop Grangemouth, North Queensferry, and Valleyfield due to very low usage. We were also moving Kincardine to the other side of the bridge, so it was near the Bowtrees service station. I don't know if you know where that is, but it's just the west side of the Kincardine Bridge. I think due to struggles getting permission for Kincardine itself. However, we have a location for this stop, hopefully for this year. We also wanted to move Dunfermline to Inverkeithing, as Inverkeithing has better rail links. However, this isn't going to be possible, unfortunately. And we've also slightly moved the South Queen's Ferry stop down to Port Edgar, which is where like Fourth Boat Tours operates from, and it's much more of a tourist destination. So the recent developments in this, so recent I had to change the slide of the PowerPoint this morning. So we're now, instead of having a Dunfermline Inverkeithing stop, we have moved to Curris, hopefully. We encountered some difficulties in getting permissions for Inverkeithing, and Curris is a great destination, very touristy, so it'd be really good to get a stop there. Um, we've got 4 stops north of the river and 4 stops south of the river now. We feel it's quite a nice distribution, and it will reduce the time significantly that it takes to get around the whole route. We're also looking to link up with bike hire places in the area, including FEL, as well as a few independent shops, to try and encourage people who don't have bikes to get out using the service. Another big change is we're outsourcing all the promotion, particularly the leaflets and posters, and they're going to cover, the whole area and be a lot more thorough than we could possibly be with our small team. We're also going to be doing some LED cycles and events, particularly at the beginning of the service to try and start with a bit more of a bang. And we're hoping that this will encourage some families to use the service as well. And finally, all the feedback form, everything else Climate Forth related that we want the passengers to see will just be on one sheet on the seat when they get on the bus. And hopefully that will reduce some of the issues we had around that. And yeah, that's everything from me. So yeah, if you've got any questions, please feel free to ask, and I've got my email address up there as well if you want to send me an email. Thanks very much.
Thank you, Will. That was really, really, really interesting. And what a huge amount of work to set up what is a really, really wonderful offering. So I think you've done an amazing job this year getting to that stage. I know how much work Ryan and the team put into a simple lead ride and things like that. So I can only imagine such a huge offering. I do have some questions for both of you in the chat to start us off. A quick one from Nikki to Will, whether you allow dogs on the bus?
Unfortunately not. I think you'd be allowed guide dogs and support animals, but the bus operator just will not allow us to have dogs, unfortunately.
Sure thing. And then also, I agree with this one. It was really lovely to see some of the local heritage spots in your video and wonderful to highlight. So it was great to see Fullen. Nikki was asking, do you know when the next lot of NCN 76 upgrades will happen going east from Fullen? And as far as they were aware, there were no funds for this at the moment. Not sure if you have any intel.
Do you mean like upgrades to the path itself, or do you mean like infrastructure?
I believe it'd be the route on.
Yeah, sorry, it wasn't letting me. My partner's just put the kettle on. It's so typical.
No worries.
No, it's fine. Yeah, no, they've just over the last year done lots of cycle route upgrades around Fullen, basically coming from Stirling to Fullen,
Mhm.
and it's literally passing through my community garden and then heading out east. But at the moment, it basically takes you out onto the pavement in the main road.
Right, okay.
So there's no clear, there's a route, but there's no dedicated safe cycle area
Mhm.
for that. And I've had contact with Marco and Sustrans quite a lot over the last year, and I get everyone's struggling for funding at the moment. So it's just to see if there was any progress with that just now, because they've done such a fantastic job. Everyone's raving about it, and then it just sort of ends.
Yeah, I think that's often the trouble with the cycle path is there's always more that can be added. So unfortunately, us in the project, we don't have any plans ourselves to be improving the paths themselves. But yeah, it's definitely Sustrans is the one that to stay in touch with on that. Yeah, it's just the new parking stations and stuff. That's what we're going to be installing, but we unfortunately don't have any funding for laying new paths. Yeah.
And I've just got one pop up here about is there any way to combat the fact that Scotland is awfully grey and dull during the winter, which makes shared bikes a whole lot less popular? Guess to both of you.
There is no way to combat that,
No,
no. Unfortunately.
no. Heated handlebar grips might be nice, but yeah, I've only got them on the motorbike, but they'd be welcome on a push bike.
Yeah, I have to say, with the offering with the bike library, you are set up with quite a fair bit of kit that does, the waterproof panniers and, the team already always on advice, lots of about reflective and the sort of safety behind it. I suppose, all we could do is provide as much information and equipment to make people feel safe to start with. And I guess, Will, you've got all the great attractions there and also a bus to sort of protect you part of the way.
Yeah.
Yeah. I've got one a bit earlier on as well, Ryan, relating. I don't know if you have insight into this through the sort of bike employers scheme, but just a sort of floating an idea of employers, more likely larger employers, having e-bikes for their employees to use so that people don't have to buy them.
Totally, yeah. It's something that we're looking at for next year, and we're like doing a little bit of work just now with Collect Manager Council. So they're looking to um, get their own fleet of e-bikes so that staff can use them, like you say, Nikki, for moving between sites, really. So not so much for like staff to take home, but just for staff to use like in the course of their day. So if they get into I can't remember what the main office is called through Collect Manager Council, but it's in Alloa. So they can use that to move between like other sites without having to rely on their car. So we've got plans for that and potentially Stirling Council as well. But
No,
yeah, it's
I
something that
think
we're
that's
looking at.
really good because I think most people would probably need to drive to work, and then they've got those little incidental meetings within the working day. So I was just thinking if there's any way, because there's sort of several business parks around. I mean,
Hmm.
I know Stirling more than the rest of the Forth Valley, so if there's almost a sort of shared resource there, even if it was just a small handful of bikes that people could then come and use, because you're not going to bring your e-bike with you necessarily in the car.
Sure.
Not as easy to then go and cycle elsewhere. So no, that's really good to hear.
I was just wondering as well, Ryan, it just worth highlighting like the new fleet of adaptive bikes that we've just got. I know they're not up on the bike library as such, but um,
Yeah, so we've seen like a demand like over so this is like the first year that we've kind of ran the bike library in its current format. We've seen like a demand from community groups and schools, especially like ASN departments and the schools across Clacton and Stirling for these adaptive bikes. So adaptive bikes are usually electric bikes, but they're adapted for folk who have mobility issues. So whether that's they can't like balance a standard bicycle, so it's a trike, or they're in a wheelchair or whatnot. So we've invested quite a lot of the Sestran funding in getting some of these bikes in. So we've got one side by side, so the two riders sit side by side. The rider on the right's the pilot, so they've got the powered side of it, and the passenger on the left can pedal if they want to, but if not, you can like disable their input. So if they're tired or whatnot, you can switch theirs off, fall back onto the motor power, and that'll amplify the pilot's pedal input. The other one we've got it drops at the front and you can load a wheelchair on it. So we've spec'd it so it can take like the largest like electric motorized wheelchairs as well. So you would like back that on, it gets strapped down, kind of similar to how it would be in like a wheelchair adapted minibus. And then the pilot sits behind them and they can get about. So we've got two of those joining the fleet like this month basically, and plans to get more little trikes. So people who they've got like transport independence, but their balance really is the issue for them. So we've got little trikes coming on board soon, hopefully.
yeah, and it was really good to hear the feedback as well, Will, from like the variety of folks that were using your service. I think I'm quite aware that, our title is sustainable transport, but we focused quite a lot on bikes today. But I'm a man, so feel free, anyone attending, please put in suggestions for any, future topics we could hone in on within sustainable transport into the chat. Also, Will, I think I'm thinking of things like our community buses and things like that. I wonder if there's any shared learning where they could become a little bit of a mini service of what you're providing as well, or if there's any shared learning around those the many logistical challenges you've had to deal with.
Yeah, I think, I mean, as most of the things we're working on at Climate Forth, it's a pilot service designed to sort of to see whether something like this is feasible. So yeah, always happy to share learnings on that. And then obviously we'll have more information after the coming season as well.
Thank you. But it's been great to hear from you, and I love that link of sort of heritage tourism, but also sustainability, and it being used for those local journeys as well, which is quite
Yeah.
fun to hear. Um, so I think we've just got 5 minutes left. Can I check in? Would anyone else have a question they'd like to ask us at all? I'm just going to give another quick plug to our upcoming events. So we've got our next climate adaptation theme is flooding resilience. That's going to be on the 5th of February. And the similar setup, we'll be hearing from two different perspectives within Forth Valley. We'll have future ones coming up as well, so keep an eye on our Facebook page. And I'm just going to pop in the link, a link to our free membership, which is hoping to connect communities and individuals, all free to join. Hoping to work on a platform this next coming year on how we can integrate a system where people can chat together through it. But for the moment, it's a space you can share your events happening in the community. You can see what other people are interested in topics-wise as a community group or an individual. So there's lots of ways we can build on it, but it's very simple at this point in time, and all these things just help us to understand who's involved in climate action locally and where we can fit in with our wider resources and support as a hub. But otherwise, if everyone is feeling happy to close up the event just now, offering a huge thanks to our guest speakers. Thank you so much. And if you're happy to, we'll share around the slides. And our intention is to also pop up the recordings of these sessions, which will be in a resources page within our website. But yes, hope you all did get to enjoy some lunch as well during the session. And we'll hopefully see you at the next one. Okay, thanks everyone.
Thank you for having me.
Thanks.
Thank
Bye.
you. Bye bye.
Bye.